Next this morning, the police investigation into a suspected arson attack at the office of MP Mike Freer is continuing this morning. Officers called out to Finchley on Christmas Eve. A shed to the rear of the building was on fire. Let us talk to Mike Freer, who is the MP. Thank you for joining us on the programme this Boxing Day. So can you just tell me what happened, please?
So good morning, Nick. I was called out on Christmas Eve in the evening as someone had set a fire to the shed at the back of our building, which unfortunately seemed to have caused quite a lot of damage. We're not quite sure what the motive was yet. The police are still investigating. What I do know is it's caused significant damage to the ground floor office and the office above. We've lost windows and quite a lot of smoke and water damage and fire damage inside the office. But the police and the fire services were on the site incredibly quickly, and as I say, the police are still investigating.
Yeah, we can see some of the damage done there. Now, this happened on Christmas Eve. Was anyone in the building or in the vicinity?
No, I'd locked up the building in the early afternoon, so luckily the building was unoccupied, and so thankfully no one was hurt. There's just a lot of damage to the back of the building and to the two rear offices, but thankfully no one was hurt.
And what went through your mind when you got that call?
Well, the sad thing is it's just the latest in a long line of incidents at my office, or where I personally as a Member of Parliament suffered abuse and attacks. And so sometimes you kind of try and shrug it off, but obviously when people set fire to something, you'll try and set fire to your building, it's very unsettling. Not just for me, but also it's incredibly worrying for my staff. You know, they shouldn't have to fear coming to work that they're going to get attacked just because they work for a Member of Parliament. So it is very stressful, very unnerving, but particularly for the staff who work for Members of Parliament.
And I know it's Christmas period, so normally the building wouldn't be used, but is it unusable as things stand?
So we've got, at the moment, most of the offices is unusable, largely because of the smell. We have no electrics, because all the electrics have burnt and fused, but also one of the main offices is completely unusable. You may have seen the photographs of the damage, and all of that has got to be so, you know, the ceilings have got to be replaced, lighting's got to be replaced, electrics all replaced, on top of all the clean-up and new furniture, etc. So it'll be a while before we're up and running, but it's quite distressing to see an office destroyed like that, but I'm hoping to be able to get my office up and running as fast as possible. Not least I want to be able to reassure my staff and my constituents that we won't be deterred. Yeah,
we can see that it's shaken you. Any idea who's done this? Clearly pointing to what police are describing as a suspected arson attack, given that the office was closed.
Well, I think the CCTV footage that we've got have given the police some very useful leads for them to investigate, and I have to say the police are working incredibly hard to try and find who did this. The exact motive won't be known until the suspects are caught. But in terms of, obviously MPs should be allowed to do their job and express their opinions freely without fear of being attacked in this way. Whatever the cause, whether it's someone just bearing a grudge or slightly more nefarious motives, we won't know until they're arrested. But in any event, Members of Parliament should be able to represent their constituents and speak freely.
Could it be, as you describe it, a more nefarious motive connected perhaps to what's going on in the Middle East? You are the MP for Finchley and for Golders Green, which we know has got a large Jewish community.
Well, I'm hoping it is if you can have an innocent arson attack, I'm hoping it is just someone with a grudge or someone with nothing better to do than cause a fire. But sadly, I've had too many incidents in the past where I've been attacked because of my views on the Middle East. But also, many of my constituents have had similar incidents. So we're not in... You know, it's not an unknown incident in Golders Green. When something flares in the Middle East, the level of attacks in my local area do go up. So, sadly, it could be to do with my views on the Middle East. I'm hoping it's not. I'm hoping it's just a slightly more mundane arson attack, if there is such a thing. But the sad thing is, we do have a history of attacks on me and my office and on my local community. So we'll have to let the police do their job and find out what the exact motives were.
Oh, what kind of history to do with your office then?
Well, over the years, I mean, I have had attacked by Muslims against crusades on 2 occasions. Also, sadly, the man that went on to murder David Amos, I was one of the MPs that he scouted out and came up to my office, and that came out in the trial of the man who murdered David Amos. We found mock Molotov cocktails on the doorstep, notes on my car. Graffiti, sadly, is a fairly irregular occurrence, and that's notwithstanding the usual abuse that we get in our inboxes. So it has been some low-level stuff, but also some quite more serious attacks on me and my office.
This must be unsettling, then, to say the least.
Without being blasé, sadly, it's becoming part of the job, and it shouldn't be. Too many MPs have had to cope with physical threats, and sadly we've seen several of my colleagues lose their lives. So it is difficult to take it in your stride, but it is a fundamental part of our democracy that members of Parliament are accessible to our constituents, and I wouldn't want that to change. Unfortunately, that goes with risks these days. I personally, like some of my other colleagues, wear stab vests if I do public events, and sadly that is par for the course these days, and it shouldn't be, but the accessibility of members of Parliament is a fundamental part of our British democratic tradition, and I wouldn't want to see that taken away.
Just a very quick question, can you do anything to help with your safety?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Could you do anything to improve or to help with your safety and those of the people working in your office?
Well, we have significant security in terms of the security doors, in terms of CCTV, panic buttons and stab vests. We don't do walk-in advice surgeries. People do have to identify that they are a constituent in some way to prove that they are a constituent. So we've taken all reasonable steps to ensure that we are safe and secure whilst remaining accessible, which I believe is a fundamental part of our tradition. And most members of Parliament cherish the fact that they're accessible to their constituents. We just have to be sensible and take reasonable safeguards.
All right, well, Mr Freer, thank you very much indeed for coming on to the programme in what is an unsettling time for you, I know, but thanks very much indeed for your time.
Thank you.